defendant slash candidate Trump. He is both things right now. This man who spent years trying to outrun the long arm of the law, a record-breaking number of civil cases even before he got to the White House, the ongoing clashes now over his fraud and defamation, both decided by courts, and then the 4 separate criminal cases and potential trials that Trump is battling. All of this as Republican candidates make their closing arguments in the home stretch to Iowa. During that period, Trump spent much of the final week as a defendant in courtrooms. Now, last year, many were wondering as the indictments started coming in, how would this even work? Well, now we can see. Trump's cases are colliding with his primary campaign, and Republican voters will decide if they want to bet on potentially rocky odds as they pick their nominee. They know that Trump's scheduled trials stretch long into this general election. And so in our report right now, here is that outlook. 4 scheduled trials, some near key election moments, as you can see. The DOJ Jan 6 coup trial slated for March. It is currently on appeal, so that timing could change. The New York case right after. The classified documents trial, also brought by Special Counsel Jack Smith, slated for May. And then the trial that could come latest or even be punted until after the election. On the bottom right, you see the Georgia RICO case proposed for August. Now, some of these cases stand alone. Trump was caught with stolen intelligence. The DOJ case is the only one that addresses that. But these other 3 Trump trials slated for the coming year, and, of course, the separate cases against Trump aides, they're all linked by defendant slash candidate Trump's plots to allegedly distort, cheat, steal, or overthrow elections. The New York cases theory, remember, is that Trump broke finance laws trying to cheat back in 2016, while the 2020 plots stretch for months. Now, we've documented that in this chart based on our extensive reporting. And when we first showed you this, there weren't indictments of Trump or his aides for these activities. Plots including elector fraud, demanding state officials or the vice president steal the election, all, of course, leading to the sabotage and violence of January 6th. Now, since we first reported all this, we have seen many of these plots indicted. That was not inevitable. In fact, there were quite extensive and controversial delays in some of the prosecution offices. But what you see on your screen, which is the evidence, the underlying material and plots that inform these looming trials, shows how much of this has been indicted. Georgia's 19 original indictments have already yielded 3 convictions through pleas. I can tell you tonight in this special report something I couldn't tell you 2 years ago. It is a legal fact that the electors and voter data breach plots, for example, are now convicted crimes. That is true no matter what happens to Trump and whether he goes on trial or gets convicted. Or take the most visible coup leader in that post-election period, Rudy Giuliani. He's bracing for a criminal trial. He's already bankrupted. He's in extreme debt on paper after the $100 million fine for defamation, all a penalty for his Trump lies. And the MAGA fans who stepped up for elector fraud, they're facing charges. The trio of other Trump attorneys already pleading guilty, some showing apparent emotion.
If I knew then what I know now, I would have declined to represent Donald Trump in these post-election challenges. I look back on this whole experience with deep remorse.
Remorse, and it's not over. The calendar shows 2 Trump trials for the January 6 plots. That's, of course, Jack Smith's coup case, which you see spot in the middle and is the foundation for why we had all of this talk of assassination and SEAL team murder, because that is the long shot or extreme arguments that Trump's lawyers were making in the appeal of that March trial. And then, of course, the Georgia case, which relates to essentially coup efforts in that single state. Georgia has jurisdiction for what happened there, not what happened in the other 49 states or D.C. And our main chart shows the indicted plots involving Trump's team with the trials to come. It's already, of course, game over and lights out for the most violent insurrectionists who stormed the Capitol. We've seen those militia leaders convicted of sedition and dealt hefty sentences. So as Iowa gears up for its big decision, the one Republican who'd been arguing that Trump's legal problems should be disqualifying is now out of the race.
All you have to do is look at the history.
Anyone who is unwilling to say that he is unfit to be president of the United States is unfit themselves.
These three guys on the stage make it seem like his conduct is acceptable. You'll all be heading to the polls to vote, and that's something that Donald Trump will not be able to do because he will be convicted of felonies before then.
Now, that's Chris Christie's prediction. The calendar shows that a conviction or acquittal could happen by Election Day. That's why it's important to chart all this together. Where as of right now, it is also possible that that coup trial on appeal for March could be delayed, even out past the election. So the calendar matters. The U.S. has never held a presidential election stacked against this kind of court calendar. If Trump were convicted, voters could factor in that legal fact. They could consider it. Outside of the Republican primary electorate, polls show independents and general election voters would turn on Trump over a conviction. And that is logical. We have a lot of history for that in both parties. And what you see on your screen are convicted politicians from both parties. Voters have recoiled from politicians convicted of serious crimes, from Republican Speaker Hastert to Democratic Governor Blagojevich. Now, Trump may run after a conviction if that were to happen in the coming calendar year. Some past candidates have even run guilty campaigns, so to speak, for the White House from prison. Eugene Debs, convicted on controversial charges about opposing World War I. He leaned into it. He ran from prison and used his own mugshot for political merch back in the day, a tactic that echoes right now. Some things change, some things don't. The Times called it the dangerous marketing of the Trump mugshot. The former president also brazenly fundraising off his legal problems, something he was doing before he ever staged a coup. You may recall how much money he took from people in the period after he'd lost the election when there was no legal chance to overthrow it. He was still taking millions from MAGA fans. The wider politics, though, of presidential prosecution are complex, and they're broader than these current candidates and this current former president. In fact, what's interesting that is both about Trump and not about Trump is the people running for the nomination right now, telling the Republican Party, pick me, not him. They still have talked up pardoning him if he were convicted and they were president.
If former President Trump is convicted in a court of law, would you still support him as your party's choice?
Can you just explain why you would vote for a convicted felon for president?
So if the Constitution permits somebody to run, and that's the person that people of this country want to elect, then that's the way our system works, and I stand by it.
I would pardon Trump if he is found guilty.
I think we got to move on as a country, and, it's like Ford did the Nixon.
DeSantis saying, yeah, like Ford did to Nixon. Now, that is a type of precedent. But as America begins the 2024 race on Monday, politics suggests that when Ford did that, Republicans found it was a political loser.
By these presents do grant a full, free, and absolute pardon unto Richard Nixon for all offenses against the United States.
The president apparently decided to grant the pardon now because it might be difficult or impossible later.
Reaction in Congress was so negative and so strong that not only has the Nixon pardon ended President Ford's honeymoon with the Congress in general, it could cause him problems in his own Republican Party.
And it did. And the problems got worse. Keep in mind, just as we analyze this on the basics of history, incumbent presidents usually win. They're usually reelected. They are the current president. They're in the White House. They have a lot of advantages that a random citizen running against them does not. But then President Ford did not win re-election. He was the first incumbent president to lose since 1932, which was back during the Great Depression. Many saw Ford's pardon as simply continuing the Republican Party's terrible Nixon crime problem rather than taking the chance to break with it. Now, as a matter of justice, the pardon interfered with the process to hold Nixon accountable. As a matter of politics, the pardon dragged down the Republican Party long after that pardon first came out, as you can see on your screen, in September 1974. In fact, if you're counting, the 50th anniversary of that one pardon for a former president is actually landing this year, smack dab in the middle of general election and a year slated for more ex-president trials than Nixon ever faced. And while much has changed, and Trump does pose different challenges, some of the core questions here are actually the same as then, 50 long years ago. And I would suggest to you, having sifted through all this and thought about it here in our special report process with our team, the questions are actually the same because they're so fundamental. Can our system and our society act to ensure that literally no one is above the law? Can our politicians, who got where they are through political means, put some certain select priorities above politics? And if anything is going to be such a priority, that you risk your career over, or you just do the right thing, wouldn't it be combating the seditionists, the traitors, the insurrectionists, and political violence in our midst? The answers go beyond tracking trials on the calendar or counting votes. The answers require principle and fortitude from our leaders, and honestly, I mean it, from us.